I clocked in with a dry pen that only worked after I shook it hard enough to splatter blue dots across the time card. Continuity log. Clock in 11:04 p.m. J. Monroe. Night cashier. Ray handed me a clipboard like it was a flotation device. Sign with your own hand, he said. If somebody offers to do it for you, they're not your coworker. He didn't smile when he said it, didn't act like he was joking. He was one of those men whose face had settled years ago into an expression of careful weather. Pale, a little oil on the forehead. Eyes that lived between the monitors and the door. QuickMart 24/7 sits at the elbow of Highway 19 and County Road H, where semis downshift and the wind carries diesel like a bad perfume. Our sign buzzes open 24 HRS in a flicker that looks like it's trying to remember how to spell. Inside is all tile and fluorescent. A white box that hums with cold air and cheap coffee. The hot dogs on the roller look embalmed. Everything smells faintly of burnt sugar and old grease. I set the coffee pot to brew and watched the first black drip hiss against the heating plate. The pot was stained brown in a way that said it had seen more nights than I have. My hands shook, but it wasn't nerves. The AC is set for meat, not people. I rubbed my wrists and made a loop of the store. Lottery kiosk, blinking paper jam, aspirin shelf, beer glass cooler fogging on the inside. When I came back, Ray had a sheet of paper folded twice and tucked into his back pocket. Before 3, I'll give you the list, he said. You'll want to read it before anything else reads you. What list? You know the kind. He finished counting the till with a thumb that clicked against each bill. His ring thudded the laminate counter twice. A habit he probably didn't know he had. Outside, a semi wailed a downshift and dropped a cloud of sound that rattled the glass doors. The fluorescent ballast overhead fizzed and popped like a fly stuck in a light trap. I pretended not to jump. We worked in parallel. He ran quiet transactions for night drifters. 2 packs of smokes, gas on pump 1, scratch-off tickets and even numbers. While I stocked the end caps with potato chips and the cooler with bottled water. Every time the cooler door swung, the gasket squealed and a sheet of cold kissed my arms up to the elbows. I breathed through my mouth to keep the smell of sour mop from sticking in my nose. At 2:55 a.m., the front door slid open by itself. No pressure pad triggered. No bell. The sound it made was a soft whisk that felt like a throat clearing. I started forward on autopilot to hit the metal switch and close it again. Because that's what your hands do in a convenience store when you see the store bleeding air, shh, and you're thinking about the utility bill. And Darlene's voice saying, "Watch the utilities, Jack." Ray's palm caught my shoulder. "No," he said. He had already grabbed a red plastic stacked chair from the coffee area. He wedged it in the doorway, legs squealing against tile, and looked at his watch. 3 minutes, he said. Exactly. What? He didn't answer. He stared past his reflection in the glass, out into the sodium yellow lot. The security camera above us ticked with the slow clockwork of its pan. The PA burped static like it wanted to speak and thought better of it. The coffee pot hissed steadily, a tiny storm on the burner. 60 seconds is a long time when you're holding your breath and waiting for nothing to happen. 2 minutes is longer. Somewhere in the cooler bank, a compressor kicked over to a deeper hum that I felt in my molars. My skin pebbled. My breath misted just enough for me to see it if I leaned into the door's wash of night air. At 3 minutes exactly, Ray towed the chair loose and let the door slide shut on its own. The glass met glass and kissed with a rubber lip. In the reflection, a dark smudge shimmered. I leaned closer. It was a handprint. Not on the outside, on the inside. 5 fingers splayed, a perfect wet print like someone pressed their palm against the glass and dragged it down 2 inches. No one had touched that door. I would have sworn it. "Clean it," Ray said, handing me a roll of paper towels and the good cleaner, the kind that makes your eyes water. "Then meet me at the counter." I wiped the hand away, and it left a residue of cold that numbed the pads of my fingers. When I turned, Ray was already unfolding the paper from his pocket, like a priest laying a cloth. "There are 5, he said. 6, if you count the one they didn't write down." He flattened the paper. The fluorescent tubes threw a clinical glare across the toner turned gray. The words weren't corporate. They were punchy, like scratched into a bathroom stall, but neat like someone had practiced copying them. "Before we go through it," he said, "understand something. These aren't to make you safe, they're to make you safer. There's a difference." Another semi rolled past. The sign outside stuttered, "Open 2 HRs for a second," like a joke only it found funny. I dried my hands on my jeans because I didn't want to leave wet fingerprints anywhere. Ray tapped the first line with his ring. That's when I heard the PA stutter again, like a breath drawn to talk. It didn't. Not yet. That would be for later. I signed the top of the shift sheet with a steady hand to prove to myself I still had one. When I set the pen down, I noticed a smear of fog on the glass again. The shape of a hand I'd already wiped away. It hadn't been a stain. It had been a hello. And I understood that the store had noticed me clock in. Ray slid the folded paper to me like contraband. "Read fast. Read twice." He turned the clipboard over and used it as a tray to hold his cigarettes, his lighter, the exact roll of coins he'd used to seed the drawer at shift change. The drawer itself thunked open with a hesitation that said the rails were due for grease. The AC coughed in a way that made me think of lungs. I read, "Rule number 1, after 2:30 a.m., don't sell gas to anyone without a car in the lot." Rule number 2, if the PA plays an ad, check the clock. If the seconds hand is stopped, kill the counter lights for 1 minute. If it's still running, let it loop. Rule number 3, if the register prints a receipt with no one at the counter, call next 3 times. If no one answers, burn it. Rule number 4, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., if the front door slides open, wedge it open for exactly 3 minutes, then let it close. Rule number 5, if camera 4 shows a car backing into the lot, do not look outside. Kill the monitor and keep working, in pen smaller. Rule number 7, always finish your shift. Ray's note, if you walk early, it follows you home. Where's rule number 6? I asked, because that's the kind of thing your mouth says when your brain is running cardio in place. Ray shrugged. Corporate misprint, he said, and didn't smile. Or maybe that's the joke. The cooler bank behind me beeped 3 quick notes, alarm, pause, alarm, like a microwave politely asking permission to be ignored. Compressor likes to sing before 3, Ray muttered. Ignore it unless it sings after. He tapped his ring against the laminate once, twice, 3 times. I watched his knuckle go white and then pink again. A teenager with hollow cheeks and a hoodie that smelled like skunk slid in under the door and bought 2 energy drinks with crumpled singles. His hands shook. Mine did not. I was holding the rules like scripture. Ray took a Marlboro out to the line where indoor becomes outdoor and leaned into the warm stink of the lot. 2 minutes, he said. If I wave, don't wave back. I didn't ask why. I refilled the soda fountain syrup, cold sticky lines wrestling in my palms, and left my fingerprints in sugar under the counter where customers wouldn't notice. The lottery terminal flashed paper jam, clear path in a stubborn box that refused all keystrokes except ESC. I pulled the printer forward and felt the pop of the latches, the warmth of the paper roll like a sleeping animal. The PA clicked, breathed static, and then a woman's voice, chirpy, trained to smile through vowels, said, "Try Frosty Fizz. Buy 2, get 1 free. Only at QuickMart." Like it was 1997 and we still stocked Frosty Fizz. We haven't carried that brand since before I dropped out of community college. I looked up reflexively at the wall clock over aisle 3. The second hand was pinned to the 12. Stopped, but not dead. It trembled like it wanted to fall. I reached under the counter and killed the counter lights. Habit said leave something on for safety. The rule said dark. I obeyed the rule. For 60 seconds, we stood in the strange cave of our own store while the ad looped again word for word. The same bright cadence, the same emptiness where a jingle ought to be. In the dark, the freezer hum doubled, and in that hum was a second heartbeat that wasn't mine. At 60 seconds, I brought the lights back up. The PA cleared its throat and went quiet like a student caught cheating. Somewhere between the lights down and lights up, the register printed a receipt. No one stood at the counter. I heard it cut. The thermal head singing a thin strip of heat across a glossy roll. The paper curling as it fed out. I felt the heat still in the air, sweet and chemical. I looked up. No one. Rule number 3. Call next 3 times. I did. Next, I said. It felt stupid in a convenience store. We don't have lines. We have drips. Next, I said again louder. The fluorescent hiss swallowed my voice. Next. No one answered. The door stayed shut. The lot stayed empty except for a moth that kept forgetting the glass was there. I picked up the paper, already curling into a lowercase c, and the letters on it changed as I watched. Where it had said subtotal $0, it now said paid in a dot matrix font older than me. Where it had said customer, it now said Jack Monroe. At the bottom margin, half off the cut where the guillotine had sliced, there was a shadow of toner the printer shouldn't have been able to make. TXN 237. It looked like a fingerprint of numbers at the edge of a crime. I held a Bic lighter under the corner. The flame licked, then hesitated like it had hit wet. The paper browned, then blackened, then sparkled and gave. On the way from white to ash, it made a sound like breath. One thin ah. And if you've ever heard paper cry, you wouldn't want to hear it again. I dropped the curl into the metal garbage can behind the counter and shook my hand because the heat had kissed my thumb harder than it should have. Later, when I washed, the thumb would show a faint red block letter P. Ray came back in and took one look at the bin. "Don't burn after 3, he said. "It's not 3. He checked his watch, then the wall clock. The wall clock's second hand was trying to learn to move again. "Close enough," he said, and pocketed the folded rules. "Keep your time to yourself, and keep your eyes off camera 4 unless you have to." I didn't ask why. I brushed ash from the counter. Some of it stuck to the sweat on my palm and made a sound like paper trying to keep me. The wall clock hiccuped forward a second. The PA breathed like it had taken a sip of water and was considering another announcement. I tucked the lighter into the drawer. I told myself I'd only need it for cigarettes I didn't smoke. And when I looked down at the trash can again, the blackened curl of receipt had uncurled a little. And the word paid was still readable, like a brand about to find skin. Tyler showed up 10 minutes late with headphones around his neck and the look of a kid who believed lateness was a personality trait. He wore his name tag upside down. His eyes lived half in the mirror of his phone. "You the new guy?" he asked like it wasn't obvious. "Jack," I said. "Tyler." He slapped the lottery terminal with the heel of his hand. "This thing jams if you look at it funny." He hit it again and the plastic rattled. "Kidding. I'll make it jam on purpose later." Ray didn't look up from his counts. "Leave the terminal," he said. "It makes its own trouble without you." Tyler grinned, popped his knuckles, then wandered to the coffee like a plant looking for light. He took a sip and winced. "This tastes like a burned church." He kept drinking anyway. I stocked aspirin and antacids with that fake grocery store carelessness that actually requires you to think about labels. The AC made my knuckles ache. The freezer aisle sang that deeper 2 note that had started to feel like a warning. At 3:10 a.m., the front door slid open with its polite whisk. Ray wasn't at the counter. He had gone outside for his 2-minute smoke, the one where he stands just inside the legal line of not being inside and watches the lot like it's a movie he's already seen. His silhouette hung in the door's reflection, head tipped to listen for something I couldn't hear. I started toward the chair. Tyler beat me there. "Don't waste the AC," he said, and slapped the close switch with the heel of his hand. The door slid shut. 3 minutes, I said, too late. "You're supposed to wedge it open." He rolled his eyes. "Is that on the old man's list? He's been doing this too long. If the door's open, tweakers wander in." The PA clicked like a tongue behind teeth. The cooler alarm gave a single note and then thought about its choices. I felt my breath change without asking it to. The monitors over the counter cycle through wide shots. Aisle 1 backroom door, cigarette case, and camera 4. The lot. The picture flipped to camera 4 and froze me where I stood. There was a truck backing into our lot, not turning in from the street, not nosing into a space. It was in the lot already, perfectly centered in the frame, and it was backing in from a point in space that wasn't a driveway, wasn't an entrance, wasn't anything. The reverse lights were white coins. The backup beeper sounded wrong, a descending scale when it should have been ascending, like someone spelling Satan with a truck horn. "Don't look outside," I heard myself say. "If 4 shows that, don't look outside." Tyler looked outside. He put his palm on the glass to shade the interior glare and peered into the sodium yellow nothing. The lot was empty in the real world. No truck, no lights, no movement. He laughed once, a short bark with no humor in it. "See? Your ghost truck doesn't have wheels." "Get away from the door," I said, but I was talking to his back, and talking to backs never works. He leaned closer. He fogged the glass. His palm left a wet smear at exactly the height of my eyes. "Nothing," he said, and then he stopped saying anything because he saw something in the reflection that isn't a reflection's job. His face changed in a way that had nothing to do with fear. It went recognition, then wrongness, then something I didn't have a word for. "Tyler," I said. On camera 4, the truck finished its reverse arc and settled into a space that doesn't exist. The cab light came on. There was a shape in the passenger seat. I stepped closer to the monitor without meaning to. The video timing code at the bottom ticked 12 past 3. Then it ticked backward to 3:05. Then forward again. The picture blurred and then clarified weirdly, like the lens had learned a new pattern of distance. The passenger turned his head toward the camera. He had Tyler's hair, Tyler's jaw, Tyler's dumb, almost smile. The real Tyler pressed his forehead to the glass. "No, man," he said, too softly for me, too softly for the door. Ray came back in and didn't glance at the monitor. He didn't have to. He could tell what was on it by the way Tyler's shoulders set. "Get away from the glass, kid," Ray said. "Now." Tyler didn't move. His breath shivered a fog oval on the door. He lifted his hand like he was testing a temperature. "Tyler," I said, "please." He laughed again, a smaller bark. "That can't be me," he said. "I'm right here." On camera 4, the Tyler that wasn't lifted a hand in a wave. The real Tyler lifted his in return before I could stop him. The lights flickered, once hard, like the ballast got punched from the inside. The PA exhaled a hiss that had sizz where it shouldn't. The cooler alarm whispered one long note, like a flat line. I grabbed the chair and shoved it into the doorway and counted to 180 out loud, because I didn't know what else to do. And because the only thing I could give the night that it wanted was numbers. When the door shut again on 3 minutes that came late, camera 4 showed an empty lot. Tyler took his hand off the glass. The smear he left was the shape of a hand I didn't want to see again. He pulled off his headphones as if hearing better now would help. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't say anything else. He didn't last long after that. I know, because I found his headset on the floor later, warm from a head that hadn't been there for minutes. Continuity log, shift. Note 3:12 a.m. Door sensor fault, T present. That night I learned a new sound, paper taking a breath in a trash can, and I learned that a pane of safety glass can be the cheapest mirror in the world. I found the slip again at 3:38 a.m., where I hadn't left it. Tucked against the cigarette rack behind the counter, curled like a fish scale. I didn't touch it at first. People think fear makes you leap. It usually makes you stare. The thermal paper still smelled sweet when I picked it up. Burnt sugar, hot plastic. A dusting of black rubbed off on my thumb, and when I looked close, I saw the block letter P ghosting the skin where heat had kissed me last time. The name, Jack Monroe, was typed perfect as a license. A thumbprint in diluted brown had dried at the bottom. It wasn't mine. I haven't been that clumsy since I was 10. I pressed the pad of my clean thumb over it and felt nothing, which felt worse. Ray was in the back room counting a carton of Marlboros for the third time, lips moving as if words kept the numbers honest. The compressor behind the cooler changed pitch like a note bending 2 degrees flat. I did the drawer. Bills sticky with hand grease, coins clean with machine oil. The cash track stuttered on the last 2 inches, stick release like a throat. I wrote the balance. Continuity log. Drawer balance 3:45 a.m., short $1.37. The number meant nothing and everything. Darlene hates shortages. Corporate hates them more. I pictured her with the manager T around her neck, clicking her pen 7 times, smile that could staple a smile to you. I refused to be the guy who stole loose singles to buy beer. I had bigger problems than beer. The register print had coughed. A fresh slip slid out with that whisper I was starting to hate. I looked up from habit. There was no one at the counter. There was no one anywhere but us. Rule 3. I cleared my throat and said, "Next." My voice sounded like the pre-record on the PA. Next, louder. Next. The doors stayed shut. The lot sodium light didn't erase the dark so much as teach it a new shape. Somewhere outside, a truck engine idled without echo. The lottery terminal blinked, last ticket, even though no one had asked it to. I struck the bic. The flame ratcheted up with a small rattling sound that put brass in the back of my mouth. I held the corner of the receipt into it. It browned, then blackened, then bloomed in that powdery way thermal paper does when it admits defeat. On the inhale of flame, the store exhaled a sound, a thin human scream far away coming closer. Not a woman, not a boy. Tyler? I'd listened to his laugh enough by then to know the shape of his voice. He screamed inside the paper like the paper was a cut in his throat. I flinched, and the ash leapt at my thumb like it had weight. It didn't burn. It went cold, shockingly, wrong kind of cold, like dry ice, and stuck. When I rubbed, the ash smeared into the spiral grooves of my thumbprint until I could read paid, stamped faint in a place you shouldn't be able to stamp. I wiped my hand on my apron hard enough to hear the fabric complain. The smear left a gray kiss where the logo should have been. The headset hit the tile behind me. I spun and saw it lying where the candy aisle meets the counter, one ear cup turned up like a little mouth. Still warm when I touched it, like someone had been wearing it 1 breath ago. "Tyler?" I called, and the call went into the freezer hum and didn't come back. Ray came out of the back room with a carton under his arm and a look that says you're about to tell him something he already knows. He put the carton down and rested both palms on the counter, fingers splayed to show his knuckles. They were white dentured with old scars. "Don't tell me where he went," he said. "Just tell me if the door stayed open 3 minutes." I nodded. "Then we did what we could," he said. "Sometimes safer is all you get." I wanted to show him the black label on my thumb. I didn't. Men like Ray have seen every version of the mark, just not mine. The PA breathed like it was going to talk. Then it did. "Coffee. Buy one, get one. Fresh all night." The voice was bright enough to feel like a lie. I looked up at the wall clock on reflex. The second hand jerked forward and held. Not frozen. Not healthy either. I stepped to the trash can to look at the ash I'd made. The curl had unfurled just enough to spell its own last word. Pie, with the D missing, gone black. I could hear something sliding in the back room. Not a box, not a pallet, wet fabric over tile. Ray didn't move. He watched my face instead of the door, and made the kind of decision men like him get paid barely more than me to make. "Put your lighter away," he said, "and if something prints with your name after 3, don't burn it in here." "Where then?" "Where it can't find air." "How do I do that?" "You won't," he said, and straightened one of the candy bars that was already straight. "You'll try. It'll count the trying." He didn't flinch when the backroom door creaked an inch, and then decided it had been a wall all along. The lottery terminal chirped one bright beep, like it wanted to apologize. The cooler sighed. The door glass was clean for the moment. My thumb had a word in it I didn't like, and somewhere outside, in a lot that wasn't ours but was, a truck engine idled a note lower than idle, as if it were listening for breath to match. Continuity log, 3:40 to 3:46 a.m. Ghost receipts. Headset recovered. No customer on cam. By the time the sun came up, I understood the rules were not about keeping the store orderly. They were about teaching me to inventory myself. Darlene came in before the birds, and before the sky even thought about softening. Supervisors smell like laundry starch and coffee lids, like signatures drying. She slid the glass door with a briskness that told the door it worked for her. "Morning," she chirped to the empty aisles that were not morning yet. She wore her name badge on a lanyard like a sheriff's star, and clicked her pen as if setting tempo for the store's heart. 7 times, I counted. I wasn't trying to, but my head does this now. Count, align, brace. "Where's Tyler?" I said, because I'm the kind of idiot who asks a dangerous question like it's a safe one. She tilted her head. "Po. Tyler. Newer than me. Headphones. Jack," she said with a trained sigh. "We don't have a Tyler on payroll." She slipped the shift count sheet out of the drawer with 2 fingers. "I need your numbers." Ray stood behind her where she couldn't see and very minutely shook his head. His ring tapped the counter once. The sound was a permission and a warning. I handed her the sheet. My thumb had a gray smudge on it, the ghost of paid. Her eyes skimmed lines. Her lips performed smile, not feeling. She made a note in the margin with her pen that squeaked like a mouse. "Tidy," she said. That word from her mouth did not mean what it meant in mine. The PA coughed to life with a blast of static that tasted like nickels. Then came a voice I recognized, and did not. Bright, cheerful. "Try Frosty Fizz, buy 2, get 1 free, only at QuickMart." We haven't stocked Frosty Fizz since my mom kept milk money in the freezer. The voice played perfect, like the past had phoned in and asked for me by name. I glanced up at the wall clock over the cigarette case. The second hand, which had learned to move again last hour, juddered, twitched, and stopped dead at the 12. It buzzed there, like an insect pinned. Rule 2. If the PA plays an ad, check the clock. If the seconds hand is stopped, kill the counter lights for 1 minute. I reached under the counter. Darlene's pen stopped clicking midair and hung like a stinger. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Light reset," I said. Lie like a reflex now. I cut the counter lights. The store went from bleach to cavern in 1 heartbeat. The white aisles became gray bones. The coffee steam turned ghost pale. Only the cooler banks glowed. Their LEDs crisp and synthetic like theater lights. She did not like the dark. You could tell because her smile widened. People who hate the dark try to bury it with teeth. "Jack," she said, and moved her pen to a different hand. A small, managerial war dance. "Don't play with the breakers." "It's in the manual," I said. "Because if you say manual in America, you open a trapdoor where argument falls through." The PA looped the ad. Same cadence, same fake chirp. In the gloom, the words sounded wetter. The hum of the cooler deepened. A long vowel that pressed the inside of my ears until I swallowed to equalize. My heart beat in my wrists. The Casio on my wrist ticked polite as a cricket. At exactly 60, I brought the counter lights back. The fluorescent tubes stuttered, then held. The second hand on the wall clock stayed dead. Ray, who had not moved, who had not dared to cough, exhaled. He had a single Marlboro in his breast pocket, and it looked like an organ he didn't trust his body to keep mate-making. I poured coffee to have something to hold. The pot hissed where the stream hit the burner lip. I smell bitter, burnt, a little like walnuts left in the oven while you answer the phone and forget who you are. My hands shook and sloshed brown up the side of the paper cup. I wiped it with a napkin that smelled like paper and bleach and 30 nights of backs of hands. Darlene clicked her pen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Batteries, she said to the wall clocks the way a doctor speaks to a rash. She scribbled on a beggar note, replace wall clock batteries. Then she slid the note under the register like a magician hiding a card. She turned, and I saw my own face in the door glass behind her, pale and electric. For a second, behind my reflection, something fogged the glass like breath. I blinked, and it was only me again. Ray leaned in near my shoulder, breath under his words. Put your watch away, he said. Now. I slid my sleeve down. The Casio still hummed a living second. It was warm against my skin. The warmth was comfort and threat in the same heartbeat. Why? I asked. Because if she sees it running, he said, looking past me, you'll start keeping time for her. Darlene glanced back, smile affixed. Problem? No, I said, rolling the cuff like I'm clumsy. Just cold. Room temp's fine, she said, which is what people say when their blood runs other settings. She left us with the note under the register and a hallway of fluorescent day ahead. When the door shut behind her, the open 24 HRS sign flickered like a blink held too long. I slipped the Casio into my pocket. My pulse said, don't. My brain said, do. The cooler hum seemed to find my rhythm and patted on the back. Continuity log, Ember note, replace wall clock batteries. Ray looked down at my pocket like a man checking an incision and said, you just made yourself valuable. Don't let her see how much. I nodded, swallowed coffee, and felt the burn land behind my sternum like a match dropped in a sink. Outside, the wind dragged a candy wrapper across the lot. It skittered, hesitated, then slid backward as if pulled by a tide. I don't know if clocks freeze because time stops, or because someone wants you to notice it stopped. I only know the Casio kept going, and I could feel deep in the floor a counting that had nothing to do with us. He came at 2:45 a.m., carrying exactly enough coins to sound like a problem when he dropped them on the counter. He didn't smell like booze, or oil, or sweat. He smelled like rain on concrete after too much sun. His eyes were white where eyes aren't. Pump 3, he said, voice dry as receipt paper. Rule number 1. After 2:30 a.m., do not sell gas to anyone without a car in the lot. I looked up at camera 4. The lot was empty. No headlights, no idling ghosts. Only the orange wash of sodium lamps and the insect static you hear in your teeth. Pump 3's closed, I lied. Maintenance. Pump 3, he said again, as if he was practicing English. Ray took a step closer. He didn't look at the man. He looked at me. R1, he said softly. Don't. The coins on the counter were more than coins. They were cool through my palm even in this freezer of a store. They set my skin's memory on fire, with images of toll booths, change jars, and a kitchen counter in a house I haven't been to yet. I already paid last night, the man said. You were here. He smiled just enough to show gums too pale. You remember. His voice had a tired, patient quality, like he was telling me not a lie, not a truth, but an inevitability. Sir, I said, mustering company, I can't activate a pump if there's no vehicle at the station. He blinked slowly, his pupils dilated like aperture blades. There is. I looked outside again, because I am still a person who believes in double-checking. The lot was a flat stage no actor entered. Void him, Ray said, politely. I turned to the POS. Blessed machine of menus and submenus. Fingers found the route on muscle memory I didn't want to have. Menu, transactions, void. The screen lagged, then populated with the last handful of sales. My name glowed on each one in the top right corner, like a brand I hadn't earned yet. The cursor landed wrong. My finger struck finalize, a tone, not an error, a confirmation, a small obedient beep. The man's smile widened in the way you'd call gentle until it wasn't. Thank you, he said, and didn't move. He didn't need to. Outside, pump 3 woke up like a lung. The screen said authorized. The hose shivered. The nozzle didn't move. There was nothing to insert it into. It vibrated in its cradle anyway. The pulsar counts ticked not up but down. -1, -2, -3. Like consumption had learned a new direction. The smell arrived next. Not fresh gas. Diesel. Cold, with a refrigerated metal taste that coated my tongue. The hairs on my arms lifted. The pump meter rolled backward to a whole dollar. Then another. The register printed. It always does. The loyal dog, paid. Monroe, on clean thermal. At the bottom, the margin the cutter always takes, TXN-237 ghosted a little. Darker this time, like it knew it was supposed to be seen. Stop it, I said. To the terminal, to the man, to the logic of events. I fumbled the menu back through transactions toward void. My finger fat with panic now. The screen went gray. Then it came back with a line I hadn't seen before. Nozzle sensor, active. Pulsar, -37. The man put his palm down on the counter. His hand was very dry, very careful. That's yours, he said. You get a discount if you pay on time. We're closed, I said, which is an absurd thing to say in a 24-hour store. Come back during daylight. He blinked without lids. I don't do daylight. Ray looped around behind me to the pump control panel on the back wall. The one supervisors pretend cashiers don't know how to use. He hit emergency stop like slapping a spider. The panel beeped a quiet apology. Outside, pump 3 kept counting down. Like a body remembering what dying felt like. The PA whispered under static, almost shy. 2:37. Sir, I need you to leave, I said, and my voice did not shake. And I'm proud of that little stupid thing. He didn't argue. He gathered his coins, and even the sound they made didn't sound like money. He turned without squeaking the floor and slid through the door like it remembered him. He stepped into a lot that hadn't grown him a car, and vanished in the way that isn't magic. It's accounting. Outside, pump 3 settled back to a flat $0, as if it had only stretched. The register offered me a receipt. The paper felt warmer than paper. It unfurled against my palm and wrote its own end again. Paid. My name. The number I was learning to fear. I put it in the metal trash can. I did not light it. Ray stared at the door, as if refusing to blink would make the man unhappy. Mistakes count as violations, he said. It doesn't care if you meant it. I hit the wrong button, I said. It was 1 pixel off. It was waiting for you to miss, he said, and tapped the counter with his ring once, twice, 3 times. The rhythm he uses to convince the world he's the metronome. Continuity log, pump record number 3. Active 2:47 a.m., $20 prepaid, no vehicle detected, pulsar -37. The cooler alarm gave one long note, then cut. The wall clocks read a time that meant nothing to my wrist. The AC raised a rash on my forearms I would later swear spelled a word if you looked too long. And somewhere beyond the sodium light, the world rearranged itself, so 237 fit my outline a little tighter. By the time 3 rolled past, and shook hands with 4 like they were trading a shift, my nerves were a braid. The store found that and plucked it. Camera 4 froze the lot, and then showed him, Tyler, standing where the handicapped space is, one hand up like he was trying to get picked first in gym class. He was too still. People out in night air shift wait. He didn't. The overlay timestamp at the bottom read 3:22:14, then smeared backward to 3:22:07, then back again. A 7-second stutter, like the camera's heart had learned jazz. Ray, I said, and didn't have to say more. He stepped to my shoulder. He didn't look at the door. He never looks at the door. I stocked the painkillers, because when you can't fix a problem, you perform ritual. My hands shook hard enough that I dropped 1 bottle. It bounced, made a plastic pog sound, and the sound felt like a noise the store waited for. I reshelved it with the label aligned perfect. It didn't make me feel better. The air smelled like ozone and hot printer. The lottery terminal blinked back to ready, then offered on its own. Reprint last ticket? Yes or no? even though no ticket had run. The yes started brighter than the no, like gravity preferred it. The PA woke and didn't pretend to advertise. Customer 237, return to register. Customer 237, return to register. The voice was Darlene's pitch sharp, but it wasn't her mouth making it. I'm not your customer, I said out loud. To the metal, and the wires, and the logic. The camera stayed on Tyler. The truck that had been backing in camera limbo last night was nowhere. Instead, a truck eased backward into frame. So smoothly it made the air look like it was the thing moving. It rolled up to the curb with that wrong sucking noise. Tires on wet tile, not asphalt. Tyler turned to it with the smile he saved for girls. Lazy and a little proud. He opened a door that wasn't there, climbed into a cab that wasn't in our world, and settled into a driver's seat with a human ease that hurt to watch. The passenger side was piled with burned receipts. I recognized the paper even at low resolution, not blackened to ash, charred gray, edges curled like tongues. His hand scooped a pile, and he bit one like jerky. The camera's resolution shouldn't have let me see fibers. But I could. He chewed, and paper dust puffed and blew through the cab, and I swear some drifted out of the monitor. Like dandruff. The lottery terminal decided for me, yes. It fed out a ticket with a shriek like a knife on a plate. 237 glowed where the barcode should be. I didn't touch it. It touched me by existing. The number sunk into the counter's laminate as a reflection. Don't go to the door, Ray said. And we both listened to an engine that wasn't outside. It idled in my ribs. The door glass was a mirror I knew better than to trust, and loved anyway. The PA said, in Darlene's voice and not, Customer 237, please return to register. The pitch went up too slightly on register, as if practicing. My tongue felt like cheap paper. My teeth grated the grit of ash. I swallowed nothing, and tasted receipts. Tyler looked at the camera and smiled with paper stuck to his teeth. He mouthed something. The lip-read part of my brain said, help me. The other part said, watch this. On the screen, the timestamp drifted again. -000007. 7 has its own weather in this store. I shut camera 4 off so hard the button squealed. Darkness in a square is somehow more persuasive than darkness in a room. With the monitor black, the engine quieted in my bones. The PA fell silent, like I'd disappointed it. The lottery ticket stopped glowing, like a roach surprised by light. Good, Ray said, voice rough. Let him be on the wrong side a while. That's safer for both of you. I picked up the 237 ticket. It didn't feel like paper. It felt like a small, stiff skin. I didn't throw it away. I tucked it in the register under till ones. Because sometimes the only way to control a thing is to put it with money. Continuity log. CCTV 3:22 a.m. Figure resembles TM. Staff file, none. At the door, where I knew there was no engine, and still heard one. The glass breathed in a circle, like someone practicing how to fog it. I understood that customer 237 was not a person. It was an account, and the store was very patient about collecting. I thought there was a logbook, and therefore I found one. That's how this store works. Think the shape, and your hand comes back with it. Behind the cigarette case, in a drawer, the label maker once said camera log, and now said merch 2011 over the top of it. I found a spiral notebook with pages like tongue depressors. Pages were torn out, not clean. Fibers hanging like hangnails. The remaining pages smelled like dust, and the coffee that floured the corners. In Ray's big careful print, a sentence sat underlined twice. Don't burn after 3. On the next torn edge, the dangling fibers spelled a whisper. Burn after. I don't think paper can say more than that, but this paper looked like it wanted to. I wrote it down because I forget when I'm scared, Ray said behind me. He didn't try to take the book, he just looked at it, like the ocean looks at a boat. After 3, I said, the receipts don't burn. They burn wrong, he said. They burn to stay. At 3:15 a.m., the register printed. It did it in the way a body breathes without permission, A reflex. The thermal head hissed, silvered the paper, and the roll unrolled like a tongue wanting to teach me a new alphabet. Rule number 3 does not care about the minute hand. It cares about your obedience. I called next 3 times. Each time it felt more like a prayer you say because it's in the book, and less because someone's listening. I lit the corner anyway, because there are only so many things a man can do with a piece of paper. That has his name, and the word paid on it. The flame took, then didn't. The corner browned like a marshmallow at the exact second you think that looks perfect. Then the brown cooled into gray, without going through the heat you promised it. Cold. A ran cold. Rushed up the paper into my fingers. Frost beaded across the thermal, like sweat in reverse. The ash that should have been heat was dry ice under my thumb. When I exhaled, my breath smoked, and the smoke stuck to the ash like plastic wrap. I could hear the ash, not a crackle, a paper sound. Shh, shh, as if something on the other side was rubbing its hands in glee. Jack, Ray said softly, and I saw his eyes go flat. You gave it reason to write on you. I looked at my palm. The letters paid rose a shade darker than skin. Not a brand, not a scar, something gentler and worse. If you pressed it, it didn't hurt. It felt like a stamp pad that never dries. This isn't my debt, I said. To the counter. To the compressor. To the half of the night that listens. Doesn't matter whose, Ray said. Only matters whose hand they can find. I dug a metal cash tin out of the cabinet, where we keep tax season in sad, bright envelopes. I put the half-burned, not-burned receipt inside, and shut the lid, and sat on it like a child hoarding treasure. I felt the cold through the metal. The tin ticked once, cooling, and then stopped like it had learned our rhythm. Continuity log. Cashier note, Ray. Never burn after 3. My fingers smelled like pennies and winter, and the cardboard you keep dead flowers in. I thought of the man at pump number 3 saying I already paid, and realized maybe he had. Maybe we all have. Ray looked at the window. The glass showed our reflections. Like the store had decided we were the product on display. Kid, he said, and he meant it kindly and terribly at once. You owe the store now. That's not wages, that's hours. I tucked my hand into my apron pocket, so paid couldn't see the lights. Somewhere beyond the cooler hum, a quieter sound started. Not an engine, not the PA, not the world. Counting. I couldn't locate it. It was in the tiles, in the vents, in me. And for a second I loved it, because loving the thing that wants to eat you is easier than running forever. Dawn never looks like dawn from inside a convenience store. It looks like the LEDs in the cooler finally remembered how to be kind. When Darlene came back, she brought with her a breeze that smelled like outside and paperwork. Status, she asked, dropping a corporate form on the counter like a priest places bread. She clicked her pen to make the store wake up and said, almost musically, 1, 2, 3. I shouldn't have, but I did. I glanced at my wrist. The Casio wasn't on it. My wrist felt naked and embarrassingly private. My hand went into my pocket like it had been trained to fish keys. The watch slid into my palm. It ticked at a normal human speed. All the wall clocks in the store said something else. Stop. Darlene's head moved a fraction. Her smile didn't. Her eyes went to my pocket like she had a magnet behind her cornea. Is your watch working? She asked. I stuffed it deeper. Batteries are fresh. Show me. No. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because there's only so much kneeling a man's spine can perform before it cracks into a different shape. She smiled wider. It made her gums show in a way that said she paid for nice teeth once. Ray, she said, eyes still on me. Do you hear this? Jack doesn't want to share the time. Ray didn't move. If he breathed, he made it the kind of breath stores don't note. Darlene leaned on the counter, pen clicking. Once, twice, 7 times. We help each other here, she said, tone in the binder under training. We're a team. The PA listened to her and then spoke with her voice. Employee Monroe is at the register at 4:13 a.m. I hadn't said my name. The PA read the Casio through my pocket like it wasn't fabric at all. The cooler alarm beeped a single metronome. My heart answered. The second beep matched my pulse exactly. The lights did a little sympathetic blink. I realized with an animal certainty that the store had found my clock, and decided it could use me. Use me as metronome, use me as count. I pulled the Casio out like a splinter. Here, I said, and laid it on the laminate. It looked ridiculously mundane. Plastic, scratched, human. Darlene's hand hovered half an inch over it, palm down. The PA said, 414. The cooler alarm beeped, my heart ticked. The open 24 HRS sign flickered a rhythm that, if you sped it, would say stay. Thank you, she said, and did not touch the watch. See, sharing. What happens if I began. And then I did it. I took the Casio off the counter and shoved it back in my pocket like a thief. The store screamed. Not loud, not first. A choking sound. A huff through the vents like a lung that had forgotten it was a lung. The cooler alarm went from metronome to continuous, a long strangled cry. The PA hissed a sound that had no consonants. The lights flickered hard enough to make me see the bones in my own hand. Put it back, Darlene said, still smiling. I did not. The scream shifted. It found the pitch of my heart and matched it. I felt my chest pull long, slow breaths I hadn't agreed to. This is what a panic attack would be if it were outside your body. Jack, Ray said. The first time in hours my name has sounded like a name and not a number. Don't feed it. I'm not, I said through a throat that had learned to tighten. The glass door breathed a circle of fog like a mouth. The PA spoke again in Darlene's voice and not. Employee Monroe is on the clock. I heard the lowercase. On the clock. Not at work. On it. Like a nail. I set the watch back down. The alarm cut to a neat, polite beep. Beep. Like a patient stabilizing. Darlene clicked her pen 7 times. See, she said, you adapt well. Continuity log store memo. Training eval. Monroe adapts well. Tell me the truth, I said. About the rules. About what this place does to people like us. She tilted her badge and looked at the way the fluorescent caught the edges. Corporate doesn't like superstition, she said, smile making each syllable a company value. They like results. You knew Tyler, I said, because I wanted to make the word land in her mouth. Who? The cooler beat found my ribcage again. I exhaled, and the sound followed my lungs like a child. When I inhaled too fast, the beep stuttered, and the light stuttered with it. Ray coughed. Red threaded his hand when he covered his mouth. A receipt tail crept between his fingers, wet with something that isn't ink and isn't blood. Ray, I said. He gagged, and a loop of thermal paper unrolled from his mouth with a hiss. It printed as it came. Letters forming while wet. Numbers tallying as if he were a printer, turned inside out. Darlene didn't flinch. She smiled like a woman in a commercial for detergent. We're proud of tenure, she said. 15 years, Ray. He tried to speak, and the register font came out of him instead. The PA said, using her voice, Customer 237, return to register. My heart matched it. The watch on the counter ticked like a stove cooling after a fire. Take your break, Darlene said to me. But don't go outside. She turned, and the door slid open for her like a dog learning sit. She paused, looked back, and clicked her pen 7 times in a rhythm that kissed my pulse, and left. The door shut. The open 24 HRS sign flickered 237 like a code I hadn't known I knew. I picked up the watch. It was warmer than skin, and I understood what Ray had meant. They hadn't hired me to run a register. They'd hired me to be one. Sometime after Darlene left and before the sun remembered its job, Camera 4 forgot that it shows a parking lot. The angle stayed the same. The world changed. The lot in the monitor blued out like footage filmed underwater. The asphalt gleamed like ceramic. The edges of things lost their fuzz and cut clean like vector art. Pump islands too crisp, the curb too exacting. In the lower right, as if anyone would ever confess a thing like this, a new overlay appeared. Zone 4. Ray, I said. He didn't answer. He was staring at nothing with a look people have right before they pass out. or die. I shook his shoulder. He swayed. Something sheened in his eyes. The receipt tail he'd spit had dried to a stiff gray ribbon on the counter. The cooler alarm began a long hold, like a singer warming a note. The front door slid open with its polite whisk. And then, instead of being content with air, it stayed. I grabbed the red chair. Muscle memory, wedge it. The door didn't acknowledge that law. It held itself open like a mouth that won't close. The night air came in so cold it bit my teeth. 3 minutes, I said to it. We do 3. The door did not study under me. It did not learn my language. Its little black safety eye winked and then grew. Not physically. In attention. In importance. It felt watched back. A pull began. Not wind. Not pressure change. A slide under my feet, like the tile had been greased in a direction. The coffee steam bent toward the door like it had made a choice. The lot beyond developed depth, then sloped, then slid with us on it. Like we'd been standing on the world's slowest conveyor belt, and someone hit fast. "Ray!" I grabbed his elbow. He was lighter than a man his size should be. The way hunger makes you lighter even when you don't lose weight. He looked at me and did not see me. He saw a number somewhere over my shoulder. In the overlay. In the pump display. In the spot where 237 lives. We didn't step forward. The store stepped around us. We moved anyway. The lot inside camera 4 and the lot beyond the door were the same now. Color bled between them. The pump island in the screen slid into alignment with the physical one. Where their edges met, blue light webbed like lightning in glass. The PA announced, in a voice that wanted to be Darlene, "Zone 4 alignment." It said it like a flight boarding call. The door stopped pretending to be a door, and was just an empty place where cold collected. The pull took us. I tried to resist the way you resist an escalator going the wrong way. You can, but you look stupid and you lose. The world tilted. We slid out. The air outside the door was not our air. It pressed with a cool, clean pressure. Sterile in the breath, like breathing from a tank. The pump island rose around us with its perfect edges. Pump 3 had a face. Not cartoon. Not human. Valves opening and closing like eyelids. Housings rising and falling like chest. I heard it breathe. "Jack," Ray said, voice a weak paper rasp. "Don't look at it." I looked anyway. The nozzle stared with a glossy black eye like a lacquered pupil. The screen showed nothing. And then showed me. Not a reflection, a schematic. Employee Monroe, TXN 237, status pending integration. Complete integration, the PA said. And every word had to move through water to get to my ear. Zone 4 overlap, the ceiling announced in text without letters. System error across the sky in a font only nerves read. The pull changed directions. We were being drawn around the island now, not into it. Paths unfolded at right angles where space didn't have them before. Aisles that belonged inside the store mapped onto the outside. Like a sticker laid over the wrong page. We walked the marked space not because we wanted to, but because any other direction was uphill into syrup. "Breathe shallow," Ray said, and coughed. The cough printed letters in the air that drifted down like ash. Total. Tax. Change due. 0.00. "This isn't outside," I said, breath making little pearls that didn't rise. "This is back end," Ray said. "You don't want to see front end." We passed a register that had never been built in our world. Curved glass like a frozen wave. Scanner like an eye with a red sclerotic ring. Behind it, the customer service desk wore blue light like a halo. A shape sat behind that desk. If it had a face, it used too few features. If it had a suit, the suit didn't wrinkle. It looked like management. "Welcome," it said. And its voice was made of PA parts and training videos and a woman on a headset who had worked here before me. "Employee Monroe, please complete integration." I didn't run. You don't run in a place that thinks for you. You pick a rule and either follow it or break it. I picked rule 4 and tried to count 3 minutes in a world where clocks are a choice. The pump breathed, and in the intake I heard paper rustle. Continuity log, system error, zone 4 overlap, cashier integrating. The thing behind the desk didn't reach for me. It didn't need to. The store knows better than hands. Don't, Ray said again. Because sometimes that's all you can give a man, a negative. I looked up. The sky showed camera 4's overlay. The drifting -000007, like a second hand that learned shame. The open 24 HRS sign hung in the wrong place, and the letters 24 and HRS traded positions once every heartbeat. Complete integration, the PA said, a little sharper. Make me, I said, because I was tired, and certain, and afraid, and private. The pump exhaled. The breath knocked a taste out of my mouth. I'll be trying to spit for the rest of my life. And somewhere beyond this neat, blue, unreasonable world, the door into the human one waited, without caring whether I came back. Ray went down like a receipt spool running out. Fast, then nothing. His knees hit the blue tile that wasn't tile and stuck like a magnet to a fridge. He gagged once and paper came out. Not a strip, a fan. Edges serrated, printing as it unrolled. Items, items, items. The font was the default font of all stores and all sins. Ray, I said. I crouched, put a hand on his shoulder. It was, God help me, warm, like the coffee pot, right when the machine flips from brew to keep. The register behind the customer desk, let's call it a person so we don't go crazy, watched. It did not move. The blue light around it thickened, the way hospital air thickens when a monitor goes from beep to flat. The PA said gently, employee Hanlon, termination sequence. It said it like a retirement party notice. No, I said. Ray's chest ticked, and where a heartbeat would lift a human man, numbers lifted him. Subtotal, tax, total. Every exhale ran paper. Thermal hissed like a small, angry snake. I can switch with you? I said. A stupid thing. The kind of thing that loves an ending, so it can be a hero on the way out. Ray laughed. It sounded like 3 pieces of paper rubbing together and meaning it. He spat letters. They hit my cheek wet and dried fast. Paid. Don't, he said through the font. You're not built. He coughed a barcode that never resolved. The lights in this blue world blinked a rhythm. 2, 3, 7. The open sign did it too. The PA hummed a note that wanted to be Darlene clearing her throat. Finish the shift, said a voice over the speaker. Her alto forced sweet. Otherwise, you'll stay. Rule number 7. Dressed nice. Ray grabbed my wrist with a normal human hand and squeezed. 15 years, he said. And then the paper took him. It started at the mouth, always the mouth, because that's where work goes in. And money goes out. The paper flared into ribbons. They wrapped his neck, his chest, his ribs. Where they touched, they printed. Ray in the header line, E. Hanlon in the employee field. He tried to tear one. His fingers went through like he was trying to pull wind. Ray. I pulled back. The paper tore. The tear healed with a line of asterisks. He looked at me one last time from under a layer of register font. His face was visible between total and change. It was the face of a man who had counted enough that numbers spent him back. Go, he said. I didn't, so it took him. The ribbons cinched. One long receipt now, spooling him like a package. He stood, stiff. A pillar of paper with the shape of a man under it. Then he burst. Not blood, chaff, thermal curls. It snowed receipts. Each curl hit the blue floor and printed something as it died. A tax rate, a PLU code, a date that wasn't our date. Some hit my face. They clung in the sweat and wrote words on me as if my skin were paper. Monroe, one said. Final, said another. The PA spoke gently with Darlene's mouth. Employee Hanlon, terminated. I hate that word now. Not because of death, because of HR. The thing behind the desk lifted a hand of cables and policy and pointed at the register that's mine when I'm human. It said, Employee Monroe, complete integration. I took a step back. The paths around us rearranged under my feet. Panels sliding with a noise like cardboard boxes dragged over tile. Every path led back to the counter. Rule number 7, it said. Always finish your shift. I did the only thing the rules hadn't told me not to do. I broke equipment. I grabbed a length of the receipt that still spun near my ankle and wound it around my wrist like a lasso. I hauled on it like I could drag the math out of the world. The ribbon ran back into the blue register in the center where the PA voice lived. The more I pulled, the more it printed, error, 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 until the print head screamed a pitch I've only heard when metal fails. Stop, said the thing. Voice for the first time, more instruction than invitation. Make me, I said again. And I don't recommend that as a strategy, but I was tired. It lunged then. Not with legs, cables, wires, policy-made limbs. The air filled with a hot electronic smell. As something in it overloaded, the lights popped one by one. Like bulbs in a nightmare where you aren't allowed to wake. Because the dream has paid for overtime. I ran anyway. I ran because every path led back to the counter. And if a maze wants you to go one way and you go another, for a second it remembers it is made. Continuity log, termination report, E. Hanlon, status closed. I clutched a receipt that read final shift, Monroe, TXN 237, even though no one had printed it yet. It felt like it had been waiting in my hand my whole stupid life. Integration is a nice word. A nice word for being used until you forget the shape of your name. The counter rose in front of me like a witness stand. The monitor above it didn't bother with camera 4 anymore. It showed me, not live, slightly ahead, my double already standing at the register, already in place, already doing the thing this store feeds on, counting. I scanned items that weren't items. He moved his lips. Numbers fell out. The scanner laser painted his hands red. The light lagged just a beat, like the store had learned to edit. Employee Monroe, the PA said, its voice a chorus of all the voices that had trained me to be useful. Complete integration. I stepped behind the counter. The laminate was warm, like a body from too many elbows. The register screen woke without my touch. The final shift receipt curled out, hung waiting like a ton waiting for a word. It had my name before I had time to read it. Jack Monroe, paid. TXN 237. I could have followed rule number 7. I could have finished the shift the way it wanted. Roll the hours into a product. Let the numbers make a meal of me. Become useful. I pulled my bic. Do not burn, the PA snapped. New tone. First time I'd heard it change. The lights flashed a warning rhythm. 237. The cooler alarm went long and low, a sound like a lung asking for permission to stop. Rule number 3 says, burn the receipt that prints with no one in front of the counter after you call. Next 3 times. No one stood in front of the counter. I called next to a world that had already filled itself with versions of me. Next, next, next. The store answered with silence. Not empty, expectant. I put the flame to the corner. The receipt took, hungrily. It ate itself fast, because time had finally agreed to be fuel. The letters paid, bulged, bubbled, and ran like plastic. 237 at the bottom glowed as if thermal paper had learned torch. The counter shook under my elbows. The neon in the open 24 harsh sign popped. Glass beads cascaded inside the tubes like rain. The PA tried to speak. It choked on the old Frosty Fizz ad, spitting it out in a stutter. Try, try, try. I kept the flame to it, even when the cold came off the paper like nitrogen, even when my thumbprint hissed. My hand smelled like hot sugar and winter in the same breath. The blue world of Zone 4 shivered. The seams where it had overlaid ours ripped, like someone pulling tape off fresh paint. The pump breathed out a last long sigh. The register in the middle of that world flickered, between equipment and something that had a mouth. It reached not for me, but for the receipt in my hand, like it realized too late that was the only way left to own me. I let it burn to the black nub where your finger learns about blisters. I crushed the ember with 2 fingers anyway. The PA screamed a frequency you don't hear so much as taste. Ozone. Pennies. The inside of old batteries. The floor under me kicked like a horse. The ceiling traded places with the camera monitor for 1 electric second. I saw myself from above and below. 2 jacks, each holding a different end of a receipt that fought to stay. When the neon exploded, the sound rained across the tiles. Drew 3 thin lines across my forearm. Red. Not deep. Real. I kept the flame on the thing that wanted to call itself final. It gave. The blue light went out like a lung punctured. The door remembered it was glass, not a mouth. The cooler learned to be quiet. Gravity forgot what it had been rehearsing. When it stopped, I was outside. The lot was our lot. Oil crescents, cigarette butts, one crushed frosty fizz can that couldn't be there and was. The air had morning in it. Thin pink at the seam where the flat country meets sky. I tasted diesel and my own breath and nothing else. My hand held a scrap of receipt, not ash, not whole, charred at one corner into a jag, letters printed clean on the part that lived. See you tonight, 37. Behind me, through the glass, the store rearranged itself into ordinary. No blue overlay, no pump eyes, no paths that made the wrong geometry, only tile and roller dogs, and a PA that thumped once and behaved. A paramedic in the lot next door looked up, squinted, then went back to the call he was on. The world doesn't stop for your private apocalypse. I walked to the counter like a man reporting for jury duty, signed the time card with a pen that did not spit. My hand shook, not much, enough to make the J&J. Monroe looked like a hook. Continuity log, end of shift, 6:59 a.m. J. Monroe. Sign out. I tucked the half-burned receipt into my wallet, where pictures of loved ones belong. It burned cold through the leather. A little brain pressed to my hip. When I stepped through the door, the sensor gave a gentle whisk. The open 24 HRS sign flickered. Open 2 ARs for a second, like a joke that wasn't. A truck a quarter-mile off downshifted. The sound washed the lot clean. I stood in the pink smear of morning and realized my heart had found its own beat again. The cooler alarm in my head shut up. I should have thrown the receipt away. I should have driven until the country turned to salt, and then to ocean. I should have. Instead, I looked down and read it again. See you tonight. 2:37. The paper made a small sound, like agreement. QuickMart doesn't ever really close. It takes breaks, it lets us think we do. And tonight I'll clock in again, because there's money to be made, and debts to be kept, and some rules you follow not because they're right, but because the only honest thing left is to admit you're being counted. I slid the Casio back on my wrist. It ticked, not for them, for me, for now. Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Dr. Noctis for more horror stories from the dark.